but the responsibility to keep up the fight. So today, that's what we do. We fight. We fight for dignity. We fight for unity. We fight for the welfare of all the people all the time. Our battalion today is diverse. Our soldiers come from every background, every corner of the country, every walk of life. Yet we are bound by the same loyalty and spirit that defined the Nisei warriors. That the belief that service is a calling, that loyalty is proven through action,
Give out charge to my
and that
phone.
America is
If my phone's
strongest
not
when
recognized,
all
it's
the
charged.
people stand. To Java, thank you for ensuring that this history is
I wasn't
not forgotten.
sure
Thank you
if
for
I
preserving the
activated
stories,
DC, if it would make
the
the AC
voices,
stop
and
working.
the lessons of the Nisei. Your work ensures that future generations understand that the Day of Affirmation was not just a ceremony. It was a turning point for the American civil rights, military history, and the national conscience. To the veterans, and the families of the 100th Battalion. I need a Terry here. You, your fathers, your grandfathers, your uncles, and ancestors built a legacy that continues to guide us. Your courage, Terry, still shapes our battalion. Your example still inspires our soldiers, and your sacrifice still reminds us that freedom is never. As we stand here at the World War II Memorial, surrounded by all the names, all the battles, and the memory of the generation that saved the world, let us reaffirm the promise that.
Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? First of all, I would like to say, if you look around, just look around. Look at not just the people that's here today, but look at the people that's just walking around with no care in the world. The reason they are able to walk around with no care in the world is because of this thing called freedom and what our veterans and our civilians and contractors have all contributed to fight for. And it lives so strong, not just years ago, but we continue to do that. I just wanted to say that as I was watching our young leaders of this great nation. So good morning, friends and families and soldiers and guests. And thank you for the honor of being here today as your speaker for the Army Reserve to pay a tribute to the legacy 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team is an honor. For reading in history years ago and refreshing up on history, when I hear the battle cry, go for broke, and how it resonates with the soldiers and how they actually knew them during World War II and how they continue to do it, it does nothing but warm my heart. It is an incredible privilege to have been invited here by the Japanese American Veterans Association. Thank you for everything that the team has done by putting this amazing ceremony together, and you continue to make sure that we never forget. Today, we're here not just to pay a tribute to the soldiers of the mighty combined unit in their unbelievable act of bravery and sacrifice in the battlefield. We're here to remember and pay a tribute to what they represent. Second, because it's warm, and I want you to hear my speech, so forgive me. During World War II, the height of the war in 1942, we didn't know who was going to win. It took a combination of leaders, a combination of organizations and units to come together to ensure that victory will be won. And I would tell you, with the 101st Infantry and the combined 442nd Regiment, they are the leaders that help us win the battle. Their combined unit and their history swung the direction of that war. The unit filled with Nisei who signed up to fight and defend our country, even though they were facing discrimination in their own place that they call home, the United States. The unit trained at the unit trained at Camp McCoy, which is also known today as Fort McCoy, in Wisconsin, and Camp Shelby in Mississippi. They were shipped overseas and immediately got into battle. The hardest fight that they fought in any history was in World War II. General George Patton stated, if anyone is thinking alike, someone isn't thinking at all. Think about that comment. Think about that quote. So it took this unit to think outside the box, and they fought. And they fought a hard victory. As the commander stated, all the history that they have of over 4,000 Purple Hearts, over 20 Medal of Honors recipients, over 70 presidential citations. And I would tell you today, that is still, and they still remain the highest decorated unit in the history of the United States. You heard that not once, not twice, now the third time. Definitely give them applause. Because of their dedication, I stand here today. As the commander said, we sit on giants, and those are giants we should never, ever, ever forget. Then there's perhaps they did the most selfless act of bravery during war. When they fought and bled and saved the lost battalion in France, taking over 800 plus casualties in a desperate battle to fight and defend and free over 200 Texas soldiers that was trapped behind enemy lines. They didn't think about, I just want to go fight and go home. They said, I have to free and help get my brothers from behind those lines. Courage, personal courage. This battle, I'm telling you, was horrible. You had over 4,000 casualties, and we kept having to refill the battle space with soldiers, 14,000 honored that served, so we could continue to fight. The scales of the sacrifice during that time was just tremendous. That's something we should never forget, all the blood that was shed and lost. So as I remember, when I look at it, and I want to say to the soldiers, when you hear 101st Infantry or you hear the 442nd, I want you to give me your battle cry. 101st, 442nd. You got to do this again. Come on now. Come on. Something to be proud of. 101st and 442nd. Thank you. Because the Nisei soldiers of this command, they actually redefined patriotism for our nation. Even though they struggled, but guess what? They kept their heads, they kept their vision, they kept their eyes on the prize to continue to fight for our great nation. So I would tell you, they are the ones that help redefine patriotism. Their bravery, their sacrifice, all the things that they did to continue to, for we can have freedom. They showed us true patriotism, even during the times of sorrow in the United States. Today, we celebrate and honor 80 years of traditions of these brave warriors, the past, and also, I must say, the warriors of the civilians of the present, who carry the Pacific legacy. We must never forget the nature and the sacrifice and the timeless example of humble courage that they taught us and they died for on behalf of our great nation. I am deeply honored to be here today to pay contribution and tribute to this unique command and incredible community. That's, if you look forward, it is them that continue to hold the door open for freedom and the rights that we have today. As they keep carrying the torch in 100 infantry battalion, I want to hear that battle cry. The years go, as they keep carrying that torch, always remember that motto that lives so strong, going to broke. That's everything. That is giving everything on the line. Thank you so much to the ancestors. Thank you so much for the current representation of the unit. Thank you so much for the future soldiers that were donning the uniform and carrying the legacy. Twice as citizen, combat ready, and we will be good.
Our next guest speaker. He's the oldest grandson of President Truman. He's the author of Robert Truman and former New York Times Mr. Daniel is honorary chairman of the board of the Truman Library Institute, nonprofit partner of the Truman Present Library and Museum, and Lieutenant Brigadier for Secretary of the Truman Scholarship Foundation, and Vice President of the Society of Presidential Descendants. He is the author of Growing Up with My Grandfather, Memories of Meredith Williams, and Dear Mary. He is currently portraying his grandfather in a one-man show called Dear Mary, as well as having an election. Please join me in welcoming the system to the grandson of President Harry Truman.
Aim that up. I'm not that tall. Colonel, you had more trouble than I did. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests. It is a pleasure and an honor for me to be here this morning. I have my notes on my phone, so if the battery goes out, I could just make stuff up. I think I'm going to talk a little bit to start with about my grandfather and how he came to be who he was, how he came to be here in 1946, how he came to be honoring the 442nd. I think the first lesson I learned from my grandfather was humility. I did not know early on that he had been president of the United States. No one in my family had thought to tell me. I found out in school. Thank God it was first grade and not fifth, sixth. I went to school that first morning, and the teacher went around the room and asked each of us to stand up and say our name and say a little something about ourselves and our families. And apparently I stood up and said Clifton and sat back down. And she said, wait a minute, whoa. Wasn't your grandfather president of the United States? And I said, I don't know. I hadn't heard that. And my mother loved telling this story almost to the end of her life. I went home that afternoon, I dropped my book bag at the door, and I marched across the living room to where my mother was sitting, and I said, Mom, did you know? And she looked at me sadly, and she said, well, yes, of course. But just remember something. Any little boy's grandfather can be president. Don't let it go to your head. My grandfather was raised well by his own parents. He was raised to work hard, don't complain, be helpful, be kind. My great-grandmother always quoted Mark Twain to it. Always do right. You will astound a few people, you will gratify a few people, and astound the hell out of everybody else. And my great-grandfather
Don't tell me now,
would
I
add,
don't have
and
anything
always
purchased
tell
now,
the
but
truth.
how much it's going to cost.
That way you don't have to remember anything.
We will get together and figure out how much it's going to cost.
Nevertheless,
set up.
my grandfather was raised in a racist household. You read some of his letters home to my grandmother, and you'd be surprised at the language that he used to describe various groups of people. That being said, he did not believe in unfairness. He did not believe in an uneven playing field. At the end of World War II, Sergeant Isaac Woodard, African American soldier, was headed home to Georgia, passing through South Carolina, and the local sheriff pulled him off the bus and blinded him for simply standing up for himself, simply asking that he be treated like a man. He fought for this country, and he thought he deserved that, and he did. My grandfather heard that and publicly ordered an investigation and a trial for the sheriff, who sadly got off. But it led, of course, as you all know, to the desegregation of the military, desegregation of the government. Later on, after the Korean War, my grandfather heard a story of a Sergeant Raymond Rice, Native American, who had died in the war, and his wife was burying him in Iowa. And just as they were about to lower his casket into the ground, the cemetery stopped the ceremony because they had discovered that he was Native American, and they wouldn't let him be buried in the cemetery. My grandfather publicly castigated those people, and he arranged for Sergeant Rice to be buried at Arlington, right next to General Blackjack Pershing, my grandfather's commander in the First World War. He did the same, he thought the same for the 442nd. And I'm going to read the same thing. Before I say that, though, one more thing. In 1847, you know, we all fought a war with Mexico, the Spanish-American War. 1947, Grandpa paid a state visit to Mexico. And during that visit, he laid a wreath at the monument for 6 Mexican Army cadets who had fought to the death against U.S. forces. And a reporter asked my grandfather afterwards why he did that, and he said, because they had courage. You recognize courage wherever you find it. The same thing for the 442nd. They had courage, and he thought that that was appropriate to recognize it. And Colonel, you and I both got the same part in that speech, but because, as Howard said before, because I actually play my grandfather on stage, I'm going to try and give you a little Harry Truman this morning. You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you have won. Keep up that fight, and we will continue to win. To make this great republic stand for just what the Constitution says it stands for, the welfare of all people, all the time. So in closing, I'll say I really can't thank you all enough. Not for inviting me here today, but for doing what you do, for continuing to honor sacrifice and bravery in the face of racism, in the face of prejudice. It's sad that we have to keep doing that, but I think today it's never been more important that you keep doing it. And I thank you all for that. It's a great thing that you do. It's a great service to this country. And I am going to close with a story that doesn't have much to do with the 442nd, but it has to do with my grandfather. It's about being yourself, being true to yourself, and always being accessible, always being human. It's a story that I love. In retirement, my grandfather did not have Secret Service protection for 10 years. They didn't extend it to ex-presidents until after President Kennedy was assassinated. So one afternoon, my grandfather was home alone reading, and a man pulled up out front of the house. His car had broken down. Smoke coming out from under the hood. He didn't know where he was. There wasn't a sign that said, "This is Harry Truman's house." The front gate wasn't locked, so he got out and he walked up the front walk and he rang the doorbell. And my grandfather answered the door. And the man said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down out front. Can I use your phone?" My grandpa said, "Sure, come on in." And he let the man use the phone in the front hall, and the man did, and he got a local mechanic. He said he'd be there as fast as he could. And the two of them stood in the front hall afterwards for a few minutes, just talking, probably about the car. My grandfather loved cars. He was a terrible driver, but he loved cars. And they probably talked about the car, what was wrong with it, and eventually the mechanic pulled up out front, and my grandfather and the man shook hands, and the man said, "Thank you. I appreciate the help and the hospitality. It's been nice talking to you." And he walked out the front door, and he got halfway down the front steps, and he stopped, and he turned, and he looked back up at my grandfather, and he said, "You know something? And I hope you don't take offense at this, but you look a hell of a lot like that SOB Harry Truman." And my grandfather just smiled at him and said, "Well, you know something? And I hope you don't take offense at this, but I am that SOB." Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for inviting me here today. It's an honor, and thank you for what you do for the 442nd for this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now honor the memory of all who served and sacrificed in defense of our nation. I invite our distinguished guests to lay the wreath. At this point, we'll let the audience continue to sit. You'll stand in a minute. If I could ask Mr. Daniel, Brigadier General Seabury, Lieutenant Colonel Insminger, Command Sergeant Major Kiaving, and Mr. High to move with the wreath to the west side of the memorial where the wreath will be placed. May I ask the audience to please stand? And please join me in a moment of silence as we remember those who gave their lives in service to our nation.
Please be seated. Please stand for the benediction.
Change to this. It started working because yours stopped working.
Once again, I ask that you pray in your tradition as I will pray in mine. Please pray with me. Holy and Almighty God, thank you for this remembrance ceremony. Thank you for all the heroes and for all that they have done for our nation. Now to all who are present, to him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to the only wise God, our Savior, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forever. Amen. Please remain standing. As we celebrate the legacy of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, please join us in singing the 442nd Regimental Combat Team song. Next. With a voice from all my name, we'll fight for you and don't let fight until we'll go to the front and act on the Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the retirement of the colors. On behalf of the Japanese American Veterans Association, thank you for joining us to remember this historical day of affirmation. As we depart today, let us remember the courage, sacrifice, and patriotism of the men and women whose service we have honored. May their example continue to inspire future generations of Americans. Thank you for being here with us in this celebration. Ceremony is now concluded. Thank you very much, everybody.
What? I don't know if I'm using them correctly.